gone from running 5 miles in one day to absolutely struggling to get up a flight of stairs. That became real life for me in 2009. As I was a little kid, I went and I was born just like every other normal child does. Taken home, great, everything's going awesome. I go for my 2-week appointment and the doctor says, here, we've got an issue. And it's something that we can't take care of here in San Angelo. So you're going to need to go see a cardiologist in San Antonio. So my parents rushed me to San Antonio, take me out of my parents' arms, and from there they did open heart surgery. I had aortic stenosis, and we spent about a month in the hospital, and it was very important that the doctor told my parents, allow her to do whatever she wants to do, whether she decides to be a kid that wants to sit around and do nothing, read books all the time, whether she wants to be an athlete and do whatever she wants to do. So my parents allowed me to do that. I became a very active athlete, playing pretty much any sport that any kid wanted to do. I played anything from baseball, softball, football, soccer, pretty much anything you can think of, I did it. I was very active and involved in my church, and we went on about life pretty much like every normal child does. I guess soccer became my passion probably about junior high, and I would go probably once a year to get my heart checked out, make sure everything was going good, and they always said, continue to do what you're doing because you're doing something right, staying active, being involved, so I did. 8th grade, I go in for normal checkup, and they say, okay, things are a little bit different. Dad says I went completely pale white at that point, and they said we're going to have to do a heart cath. I got pretty nervous because for many years of my life, things have been going great. So why now, and why is something going wrong? I haven't changed anything, been very active throughout my lifestyle, so what have I done differently? And they told me I hadn't done anything different. It's just the changes that were going on. And so I went, we checked out the heart pressures and the lung pressures, and they said things look much better than we ever thought they would. Unbeknownst to me, my parents had talked about a heart transplant with my doctor and the possibilities of going different places to talk about a transplant because they thought it was that serious at that point. We rock along, playing all the sports, doing everything, so they said, go back to living the lifestyle you want to live, because not very many people are as old as you doing and living the lifestyle that you want to live, and being as healthy as you are. And so I did. I played soccer, club teams, I played volleyball, junior high, and basketball, kind of, those 3 were the main sports that I did at that age. Then, about 10th grade, we go back in and they say, oh yeah, looks like you're going to have to do another heart cath. And so I just figured, okay, we'll just go in, do another cath, and we'll get done, we'll get out of here. Things did go well again, and they said, so this is probably going to become a 2-year thing. I said, oh great, this is awesome, I love these, right? Yeah, they're not fun at all. But you got to do what you got to do. Take care of business, make sure you stay healthy. So I did. Through high school, I ended up graduating. I was getting ready, I guess, about my senior year to get ready to do another cath, and they said, things look great, just keep going on. So I did, and I ended up going on to play collegiate soccer, and played soccer throughout my 4 years. And 2 months after my senior year of soccer, I'm walking to go see spring soccer play. A couple of my buddies, and I walk over and I feel like I get a pull in my leg, and my foot becomes numb and white. So, of course, I sit through the game, whatever, I'm thinking my foot will come back. And after the game, I take my shoe and sock off, and a friend of mine, her mom was sitting there, and she said, oh, that's an issue. When your foot's as white as the napkin that you're looking at, that's an issue. So I call Mom. Of course, Mom being a nurse, she's going to know everything, right? Of course. So she says, you'll be all right. Not unless if it stays white for a while, then probably go see somebody. So we did. And a couple hours later, it came back, so I didn't really worry about it. Eventually, I came back to Angelo, and they said, you have blood clot in your foot. And of course, the heart doctor wants to look at everything, see how everything's going. Throughout the years, my heart continued to grow, and it never stopped like a heart should stop growing. My lung pressures became elevated as well, and so they started looking where the clot kind of came from. It was sitting inside my heart because some of it from the original surgery had built up scar tissue, so it was kind of a spongy-like in one of the chambers of the heart, and so it was sitting in there and it kind of sprayed off. And so we went in, we started on some medicine, and now, as I said, we also want to start looking at some lung medicine, see if we can kind of change your lungs, see what we can do with that, because they were at a very high pressure as well. And they always said, we don't know how you're doing, what you're doing, running as much as you're running, and playing soccer at the collegiate level, anything, because you shouldn't be able to do this with the pressures you have and the heart condition you have. But if you don't go in with that attitude, then you're not held back by anything. So I always just did whatever I wanted to do. As we went on, I guess I graduated from college December of '08, and we started on all the meds throughout this time. And things were rocking along. I was running 5 miles, I was lifting weights, I was doing just about anything I wanted to do. And we hit the summer of '09, and I'm standing there making dinner, and my heart just starts going crazy. And I'm thinking, okay, it's done this before, I know how to get myself out of it. That's one of those things that when you were born with things, you learn how to take care of everything and get yourself out of it, all that sort of stuff. So I couldn't get myself out of it. So I put on a heart rate monitor because I had started running with one to kind of gauge my heart rate. And it's telling me I'm going 230, 240s. That's an issue. So I'm told. So we have a firefighter that's at our house hanging out with us that day. And he kind of looks at me and he's like, man, those things are toys sometimes. He goes, let me check it out. And he looks at me and he goes, okay, so we got an issue. He was like, I think we're going to the ER. So we run to the ER. Long story short, they cardiovert me. And of course, cardiologist in San Antonio that's been seeing me since I was 2 weeks old says, we definitely need to check this out and see what's going on. As we look at everything, we go back, we do an echo, we do all that EKGs. And he says what has happened is your heart is expanded so much, it's pushing on your esophagus. It's growing that much. Your lung pressures have gone up to about 98%. A normal lung pressure is about 28%. So when I had that AFib and they had to shock me back in, I ran about 5 miles the day before, and I now was struggling to walk. I struggled to make it up to see the doctor in San Antonio that day. I remember my dad looking back at me going, are you going to come or what? I mean, you're a little slow these days. And I said, yeah, I'm struggling. And he could tell by the look on my face that I was struggling just to get my breath. And so it was that quick that I learned how important just the simple things of breathing were, the simple things of walking. And so he looks at me after everything and he goes, so I know at times we've talked about transplant and what all could go on with that. And he said, I think we always told you, you would be the one to tell us when it's time for transplant. And I think you know at this point you can't do the things that you once could, and it's time for transplant. I was 24 years old at the time, trying to get a job, thinking I was going to coach and teach. So coaching is now out of the question. I can't hang with all these kids, so I don't want to do anything like that. So they say, is transplant need to get you hooked up on meds. But I don't really have time to do that yet. So I say, okay, but we're going to wait a little bit till I have a job. And so I come back to Angelo. I start working at Central High School. The easy things like standing up out of your chair. I would get dizzy all the time. I would pray all the time that I wouldn't get passed out in front of my students. Walking up and down the hall to go get something out of the copier, I limited it all the time because I struggled to even walk a few steps. So my life as an athlete, collegiate athlete, to barely walking, I was struggling every day. But I knew every day was a blessing. And I continued to try to stay as fit as I could. So I would still go at times to work out at the health club, and I would walk at a very slow pace on the treadmills. And then about Thanksgiving, we would go in, and they would get me hooked up on a 24/7 IV med. Once I got hooked up, things started feeling a little bit better. So I now went to work with a backpack on, cool IV medicine coming out of it, hooked up into my arm, an external defibrillator that went around my chest with a big battery pack in case something were to happen, it would strike me back into rhythm. And so we have lots of life lessons with my students. Of course, when you have a teacher that's 24, walks in with all this gear, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's wrong with this girl? So we have lots of life lessons, and throughout that time, I got a little bit better. I was able to do more, and I started where I could walk faster. I started to be able to ride the bike, and even during my time when I was in the hospital waiting to get hooked up on all this stuff, they would bring in the thing like this thingy. They would bring in stationary bike so that I could work out because I knew how crazy I would go if I didn't get to do things. And they would look at me and go, "Who sits in the ICU and we bring in a stationary bike for?" Well, I don't know, but you're going to do it because I'm going to go crazy if I don't get to do some type of workout. So we then go back at spring break after I've done this medicine, and they're hoping that it's brought down not only the heart pressure but the lung pressure, because at one time we looked at a heart and lung transplant because my lungs were so bad. And they looked at me and they said, so lung pressure's haven't come down really at all. So we are seriously looking at a heart and lung transplant. And then about that time, my lung doctor looked at me and said, we're going to try one more medicine, see what we can do. So we tried it, and almost immediately lung pressure started coming down. And they said, so we've never done this before, but we're going to put you on both IV medicines. And so you're going to go home, and we're going to see how it works. You're kind of our guinea pig. Let's have fun, pretty much. Okay. So, but this medicine has now become my lifeline. I depend on it. It is, I wouldn't be living without the medicine, pretty much. So my body is dying, but my life is sustained on this medicine. And the medicine is such that people around here don't know about it. I have to carry the type of medicine with me all the time. I have to carry the changes of all the type of medicine all the time with me in my backpack. So my backpack now becomes much bigger, and I don't go anywhere without it. Being 24, 25 years old, and your mom having to help you shower, having to help you put on clothes, it takes you back and makes you realize the small things in life that you don't take for granted. Showering without tubes, things like that I never realized what I took for granted from beforehand. And so at that point in spring break, they said, your lung pressures, we now know, are down low enough, and we know we can change your lungs back to a normal. We are going to